Okay, let's get a good look at the crankshaft here. I like to take a zip tie and just pull whatever's on there off and put a zip tie through it so that I know it gets back on the same orientation. So you've just got it's basically just a thrust washer and then the bearing. So looking inside the bearing, you can see there's no scoring. It's nice and smooth. Everything looks good there. So we can just set that aside. Other end, same kind of deal. Everything off. Just kind of slip it over the zip tie. Just to be sure it all goes back in the same orientation that it came out. Thrust washer looks fine, no scoring. Nothing strange about it. The thrust bearing felt nice and smooth before I pulled it off, and then this is the shim and it looks good. Bearing looks good, no scoring, nothing odd there, so just set that aside and wash it up. Crankshaft can just wipe the journals down real good. They look really nice. Make sure your rag is clean. You don't want to get a piece of crud in there. You could put a big scar in there. So all of the journals look outstanding. I mean, virtually, looks like nowhere. I mean, practically new. We're going to measure those now just to be sure. So these are main journals. These are crank pins, or these are main journals here and here, and then these are the rod journals here and here. So let's check the specs. I've got a 1 to 2 inch micrometer, and I also have my calipers. Really, I think either one works fine here. Take a look here. This is a series 2, so crankshaft crank pin, new diameter, so 3733 to 3738, max outer round 5/10,000ths, max taper 1,000. So crank pin here. So we're looking for 1373 to 1378. So let's just try the caliper out first. Make sure you're not hitting on the oil passage. It'll throw your measurement off. Let's see if I can stand this up where you can see what I'm doing. (13725). Actually, just a little bit under. That's about 5/10,000ths under. So now let's check it 90 degrees from where we were. Same thing, 2.5. Here, 2.5. So 13725. Yeah, that's definitely 5/10,000ths under. Now this thing is ice cold, which is going to make a difference. Check the other pin. Same. 3.7. Yeah, about 3.725. 3.725. It's going to be right about the same. So we're good on taper. We're good on out of round. But we are showing slightly undersized. But like I said, it's ice cold, so I'll let it warm up and check it again, and I'm sure it's going to be in spec. Let's just check it with the mic, see if we see anything different. This is showing just over 373. Yep, 373. So, like I said, I'll let it warm up. I'll check it again to be sure. But you know, once it warms up, it's definitely going to come out much better. It's crank pin Sue. Main bearing shows minimum diameter of 1.7407. Minimum diameter. So 1.7407. A new, let's see, connecting rods. Yeah. So let's just see where we're at here. I'll lock that. Seven, 40. Looks like about 741. Okay, 742 is new, so 7407. So that one's good. Okay, I'm going to just check the rest of these. I'm going to do here, I'm going to do 90 degrees, and then I'm going to do the other end of it also, and then we'll come back. Okay, connecting rods. I took the number 1 cylinder and just very lightly engraved a 1 on there so I don't mix them up. We can look these over. I mean, they look great. The bore is nice and clean. There's no scuffed scars, nothing in either one. The pin end, I mean, it's perfect. You almost never have problems at the pin end, but best to have a look in there. So we'll start with number 1. Telescoping gauge. Well, I may have got the wrong one. Let's see, the connecting rod bore 1.3765. I also remeasured the crankshaft. I re-zeroed my mic, made sure everything was good there, and it's very close to minimum. Oops. But it is good. Oh my gosh, this thing is beating me up. Alright. That's just a little bit loose in there. But we'll see what that gets us. And I'll show you why in a minute that this isn't really that important. Okay, I've got 1.2, maybe 276. That doesn't seem right. 1.3, oh, 1.3. Helps if you can read the tools. Alright. Yeah, 1.374 is what that shows. which is just a hair under minimum, but like I said, this telescoping gauge was a little loose in there. We can try that again. I think this is going to be better. It's showing about 375, which would be, let's see, right at minimum. I can check this other one. It's hard to do. This feels a little loose in there, so we're probably going to come up a little small. We are 3755 probably, so close to minimum, but they are both in spec. So now I'm going to bring the crank back over and I'll show you how to get the most important number here. Okay, the most critical dimension here is right here on the spec sheet. Crankshaft connecting rod to crank pin, and that is 12 to 24 10,000ths. So that's actually how much space there is in between the rod and the crankshaft. And the way to measure that is here with plastic gauge. It's this little fine plastic that I'm going to put on here, and then we'll put the cap on and smash it down, and then actually the other side, depending on how wide it gets, that's going to tell you what the clearance is. So I'm going to take just a little piece, like so. There, get it to stick right there, and I'm going to put the rod cap on. Now this is number 2. So there you can see the arrow match mark, the match mark, so you know that the rod cap is on right. Here there's 2 bosses. These go towards the flywheel side. So make sure you're getting the right rod on the right journal. You don't want to rotate the rod while you're doing this. These are kind of a pain. They're this Posilock rod. Kind of makes things a little difficult, but we should be able to get it. Okay, it's got the rod pulled up. Okay, we're just going to snug these up. Just tight enough so that you know the gap is closed all the way is fine. I'll loosen them back up. Alright, gotta thread them back like that. Now that rod is going to stick a little bit, so something like the handle of this screwdriver gently will knock it loose, because you don't want to affect the plastic gauge in there. So make sure you're not hitting the rod cap, you're just hitting on the bolt. Okay. So hopefully you can see there is our plastic gauge. So comparing it to here, I would say we are right at 15 10,000ths. And what was the spec again? Let's see, connecting rod. What the heck did I do with it? Connecting rod to crank pin running 12 to 24 thousandths. So we're at, or 12 to 24 10,000ths. So we're at 15 10,000s, which is outstanding. That's very nice. So now I did go back and measure the bore some more at different angles, both sides, to make sure there is no taper at all on this thing. There's no wear in there. It looks perfect. I checked the crank pins, 90 degrees from each other and at both ends of the pin. So I know that there is no out around, there's no taper. Just putting these rods back together. There's no out around, there's no taper, and now I know what the clearance is, and it's great. So I'm going to check the other rod, and then we'll go ahead and assemble this. Okay, I did go and take a little Scotch-Brite and just cleaned up the little bit of surface rust on here, just so it doesn't bother the seal when it goes back on. The journals just wiped clean, nothing else. I didn't polish them, I didn't anything, because they look really good. So, some engine assembly lube. Now what I've got here is these two bosses go towards the flywheel on this, and then the arrows also have to be lined up. So I'm just going to put some assembly lube in there. Nice healthy coating. Get some on the sides. That's also a wear surface. And I'm going to do the cap as well. Okay, and then let's double check which way we go on. Now be careful when you're sliding it over the crank pin. You just don't want to scratch it. So that is there. Get a better grip on that. Get a nut on here, and then I'm going to wipe the grease off my hands. Okay, now that won't fall apart or anything. And then the torque spec, because this is the Pozolock rod, as they call it. The torque spec for a new rod is 140 inch-pounds. Torque spec for a used rod is 100 inch-pounds. And I think I will do this in a couple of steps. Set my torque wrench to, just going to go to about 70 inch-pounds. There we go. There's that one. Now I'll reset my torque wrench to 100 inch-pounds. Right there. Right there. And now I'll just do the other rod. Okay, so I cleaned everything with a little bit of brake cleaner. Now I'm just reassembling it. I already greased the bearing some. I got a little bit of grease on here. You can just grease everything up as you reassemble it. Spray this a little more. You really can't be too clean. Okay, this is the main bearing. Gonna spread the grease around. inside. And like I said, everything just goes on just like it came off. So now I'll get everything on the other side. Okay, so that's pretty much your crankshaft reassembled. Now I'm just gonna get a light coat of grease on all the bare metal, because like I said, this could be a few weeks or so before I get it back together. You never know. Unless you have all the parts and you're assembling it that day, you don't know what could happen. It could take, you know, sometimes weeks to months, who knows. I don't need this thing until spring, so this way I don't have to worry about it. I'm going to wrap the whole thing in a nice clean rag, and I'll probably throw it in the basement where the temperature stays consistent so I don't get a bunch of condensation. But that's it for the crankshaft reassemble.